This course element is focused on health and safety considerations common to most, if not all, field monitoring activities. Material in this element covers the entire process of planning, driving, and performing work at the monitoring stations. Click on any topic to go to it directly. When you're preparing to go to the field for sampling or reconnaissance, there are many things you have to keep in mind. Be aware of all safety concerns, including driving and road safety, navigation and getting lost, waiting and being washed away, meeting contentious landowners that want you out of there fast, encountering animals, insects, and reptiles that can hurt you, coming into contact with contaminated water or sediment, and so on. Use safety checklists when preparing for every trip. Keep all safety-related information in one place, with the watershed folder or the site dossier that you developed during reconnaissance. Make sure that it includes copies of all checklists for safety, equipment, vehicle, boat and trailer, and all information on site locations. Leave emergency contact names and phone numbers at work and with family or colleagues. Make an itinerary for each field trip and leave a copy at the office. Schedule daily check-in times with work or colleagues. Follow the established schedule. If the schedule changes, notify all concerned parties. Obtain communication equipment such as cell phones and two-way radios. Know their range and coverage, and pack them with your gear. Click on the button to view a variety of generic checklists you can use to start with and build on to tailor your own. When you're preparing to go to the field for sampling or reconnaissance, there are many things you have to keep in mind. Be aware of all safety concerns, including driving and road safety, navigation and getting lost, waiting and being washed away, meeting contentious landowners that want you out of there fast, encountering animals, insects, and reptiles that can hurt you, coming into contact with contaminated water or sediment, and so on. Use safety checklists when preparing for every trip. Keep all safety-related information in one place, with the watershed folder or the site dossier that you developed during reconnaissance. Make sure that it includes copies of all checklists for safety, equipment, vehicle, boat and trailer, and all information on site locations. Leave emergency contact names and phone numbers at work and with family or colleagues. Make an itinerary for each field trip and leave a copy at the office. Schedule daily check-in times with work or colleagues. Follow the established schedule. If the schedule changes, notify all concerned parties. Obtain communication equipment such as cell phones and two-way radios. Know their range and coverage, and pack them with your gear. Click on the button to view a variety of generic checklists you can use to start with and build on to tailor your own. Your folder should also include escape routes and locations and phone numbers of emergency facilities, such as hospitals, California Department of Forestry stations, California Highway Patrol stations, and so on. Make sure that these lists are current. As you plan your expedition, make sure you have all access permits that have been issued. You should also seek out additional information specific to the site regarding other access constraints and potentially contentious landowners. You will need to know which areas to avoid at certain seasons due to hunting activities, and make sure you pack extra visible clothing. Talk to your regional water board staff and to local police if you suspect that some areas in your watershed may harbor illegal growing or processing activities, and stay away from those. Remember, booby traps can maim and kill. Include all this information in the watershed folder, or the site dossier, which is compiled during reconnaissance, and make sure that all crews who are expected to monitor those sites have access to this information. If at all possible, make sure that each crew has a copy of the site dossier when visiting each site. If you are in charge of assembling a crew for the expedition, it is your duty to coordinate with them and give them the necessary briefing. Even if you are working on a shoestring budget, always have someone else in the field with you. The importance of having a buddy cannot be overemphasized. Your project directors do not want you to suffer the consequences of going out into the field by yourself. However, there may be situations in which you will need to go out by yourself. Whether you have someone with you or not, always take the basic precautions. Leave names of emergency contacts and phone numbers at work and with family or colleagues. Leave a copy of the itinerary at the office. Check in often, update, and make sure you have the appropriate communication devices and are able to use them. You will need to drive to get to most, if not all, of your stations. Make sure you have all the licenses and authorizations to drive the vehicle you intend to use. If you drive a state vehicle, you will need a valid defensive driving certificate as well. Remember that you cannot offer rides to non-state employees in a state car, so make careful arrangements with your volunteers if needed. When you receive a vehicle you do not normally use, take time to check that everything works and familiarize yourself with all the emergency and safety equipment. Make sure that all cargo is carefully secured. Take the car for a spin to see if you feel comfortable driving it. Click the Checklists button to go to Vehicle Safety to view a complete list of things you'll want to think about and verify. Fleet vehicles vary in operational characteristics. Make sure that you are familiar with the operation of the particular type of vehicle you are taking into the field. Always use the type of vehicle that is appropriate for the expected field conditions. Create and use a checklist for each type of vehicle or sampling trip to make the inspection process consistent and routine. Check the operation of lights, locks, seat belts, windows, the tailgate, four-wheel drive, and the hood release. Check condition and inflation of all tires, including the spare. Confirm that the vehicle is equipped with proper safety equipment. In addition to all the agency identification papers, access permission letters, and other documents, make sure that you have your driver license and the vehicle registration in the car with you. Take all the necessary maps with you and use them. It is preferable to have someone help with the navigation if you are the driver. Do ask for directions when lost. Before you start driving, make sure that all vehicle occupants are wearing seat belts. On the road, obey all traffic regulations and operate your vehicle safely with regard to current conditions. Even if the map had indicated that the road you plan to take was accessible with the type of car you have, make certain that the road is still okay. Never drive on roads that your vehicle cannot negotiate safely. There are many things you have to pay attention to while at the site. Remember, the most prevalent health and safety issues are slips, trips, and falls. For example, when you explore areas where deposition of fine sediments has occurred, you want to avoid trouble spots where the mud is soft and deep. Always keep your eyes open for dangerous critters and stay away from the poison oak. The boxes on your screen list a few of the hazards you might encounter when engaged in field activities around California's water bodies. As you familiarize yourself with your area, remember to observe and record potential hazards, and be sure to communicate them to others on your team. Ask your health and safety officer or coordinator for hazard evaluation forms if your project requires formal hazard communication. Good planning will ensure that you have all the gear and clothing you will need with you on the boat or in your backpack. Place them where you may need them rather than leaving them in your car. Exposure to the elements may not only decrease field operators' effectiveness, it can also endanger their health. Make sure that you are protected and know how to manage under extreme temperatures. Seek shade whenever you can. When you stand on a road bridge to collect samples, you endanger yourself. Always wear a safety vest. Use orange cones to mark your movement range and avoid sampling at night. If nighttime sampling is necessary, put out various lighting devices. If you use a boat, review current boat safety procedures and make sure that you have all of the right gear on the boat with you. During the reconnaissance phase, you are in charge of evaluating whether sites are readily accessible, and you'll probably get to do some hiking. If you choose sites that are inaccessible by car, getting to them will require hiking with all your sampling gear and containers. Hiking has its own set of concerns. Getting lost is one of them. Have a trail map with you, preferably with topographic information, and be sure that you know how to read it. Stay away from cliffs, and although it is not necessarily a safety concern, respect conservation efforts and avoid walking into erosion reduction projects. Before you decide to wade, check the field folder for information relating to safety, including maximum depths in relation to stage, special conditions such as slippery rocks, drop-offs, and holes. Examine the section of stream you plan to wade carefully before getting into the water. Even if you are a big and tall person, do not attempt to wade in a stream for which the values of depth multiplied by velocity equal or exceed 10 square feet per second. For example, if the deepest point you will need to access is 4 feet deep and the current velocity is 3 feet per second, the multiplication product will be 12, and you should not wade. This factor may be lower for smaller people, so please be selective. Remember, if the current is fast, it is exceedingly unsafe to wear chest waders that you strap on over your shoulders like the ones in the picture. These things are a no-no in high-velocity environments, because if you slip and fall, these waders will fill up with water up to your chest, and you can't get them off fast enough before the weight of the trapped water sweeps you downstream, no matter how shallow the stream is. Some folks wear a tight belt around the waist on top of the wader so that water entry into it is greatly restricted, and some even carry a knife on them so they can cut their way out of their waders. The writers of this module have not heard too many success stories about these methods, and therefore feel that they should not be recommended either. Wear hip waders, or if you must, use short waders without shoulder straps. When you wade, you need to always be aware of surrounding conditions and objects. Watch for debris floating downstream. If caught by surprise, the impact of a small branch can be more severe than you think. Watch for sand channels that can shift underfoot and become quicksand. Watch the stream stage, especially when it could rise rapidly. For example, if it has recently rained in the watershed, or if water is suddenly released from a reservoir upstream. When wading below a dam or control structure, contact the gate operator before entering the stream to make sure that you are aware of their release plans. Always be clear about what you need to do when things go wrong. Make sure that you know where the first aid kit is. When someone gets hurt, find it and help them as best you can. Always have communication devices to call for help. Make sure that everyone in your crew knows how to operate these devices. Always have someone on the team that can hike or drive back to get help. Use distress flares in a manner that will help others find you. Do you have a health and safety officer? It is a good idea to have one, especially if your project involves several field crews. If you bring in a trained health and safety officer, he or she may already have a lot of safety checklists, equipment, and information. Alternatively, you can appoint one of your crew members. If you're in charge of the project's field operations, make sure that you allocate enough time and resources to the health and safety officer to enable him or her to fulfill their role. The health and safety officer will be in charge of creating and maintaining a special health and safety binder, training other crew members, obtaining and updating emergency contacts, keeping the filled-out hazard evaluation forms, and other activities that will help make sure that your project crews are looked after. The activity on your screen involves identifying the various roles of a health and safety officer. Click the roles that you think apply to a health and safety officer to find out if you got it right.